Well, here we are, 0-6, and that elusive first victory has managed to evade Zach Taylor for yet another week. My name is Matt Minich. This is Bengals Chalk Talk here on Orange and Black Insider. Thank you for joining me today. Although being a Bengals fan definitely isn't getting any easier. We did, however, see one great play. Really, the play of the week from the Ravens matchup is pretty clear, and that's what we're going to start off talking about today. It was the first play of the game. It is the kickoff return that Brandon Wilson took to the house, 92 yards. So, first thing to talk about with this. Now, it's important to understand, just for the verbiage and as I'm explaining it, when you look at a kickoff team, you always want to number them from the outside in. And it's a bit, it kind of goes back to how the rules used to be that you could put a bunch of people on one side of the kicker. You can't really do that anymore. But that's why it's important you go from outside in, because otherwise you could end up missing somebody. So looking at that, you start on the left-hand side, and you've got the L1, right, from the kickoff return team's point of view. That's the L1, then the L2, L3, L4, L5. On the other side of the ball, the other side of the kicker, is the R5, the R4, the R3, the R2, and the R1. So to start off with, the first thing you have on the kickoff return team, the first group of players you have are the front line. We're going to call them tackles, guards, and centers. There's 6 of them in total. And those players are going to be responsible for blocking 6 players on the kickoff team. So first, the left tackle. All right, so the tackles are all lined right about the 50-yard line. Excuse me, the whole front line is right about the 50-yard line. So Stanley Morgan's the left tackle. He's going to drop back into the inside, and he's going to block out on the L2, all right, since this is a middle return. All right, the left guard just inside of him, or on the top of the numbers, is Leroy Reynolds. He is going to drop back inside of the L3 to block out on the L3. The left center inside of him, just a little bit outside of the hash, is Clayton Fejedelem, and he is going to drop back and inside to block out on the L4. On the other side, we've got the right center, right on about the hash mark. He is going to drop back and block out on the R4. So we're starting to really kick players out of the middle of the field, trying to get everybody outside of the hash in order to open up this return lane. The right guard is Jermaine Pratt. He's going to drop back and kick out on the R3. And then a little bit of a change here. The right tackle, Damian Willis, he drops back and blocks out, but he's actually going to leave the R2, and he is going to block out on the R4. All right, so that's where Willis is coming in, and that's what he is doing. And those are the front line responsibilities. So now they have left outside of the kicker 4 players unblocked. That's the L1, the L5, the R5, and the R2. And they've got 4 blockers remaining. Now, the L1, they're going to let him go. And he actually kind of runs right past the play. So that must have been something that Darren Simmons, scouting up this kickoff team, for some reason knew that the L1 wasn't going to be a problem, but the R1 would be. So they're blocking the R1. They're actually going to let the L1 go. The next group of players on the return team that we'll look at, we're going to call the ends. All right, they both happen to be tight ends, and that's Carter and Sample. So the ends are located about 7 yards or so behind the front line and right in between the tackle and guard on the front line. So Carter on the left and Sample on the right. Now they're going to drop back and they are going to double team the R5. Now they've done a lot of rules lately where you can't do a wedge, you can't have 2 guys coming together. So I think that this kind of avoids that rule because they never really come together. You've got Carter dropping back and eyeing up the R5 to his inside, and you've got Sample dropping back and eyeing up the R5 to his outside. and they converge on the man. They never come together themselves and track him together like you would in a wedge, in a two-man wedge. They converge on him separately. So I believe that's the distinction that makes that a legal block. And then in the back, we've got the two fullbacks. All right, Samaje Perine on the left and Andrew Brown on the right. Perine is going to go all the way across the field, and he's going to block out on that R2. And then that leaves just the L5. So we double teamed the R5. Only one player left to block that L5, but he's the biggest guy in the field. Andrew Brown, probably somebody that most people are surprised to see playing special teams, especially on kickoff return team. You don't think about a big D lineman like that on the kickoff return team. You're not used to seeing number 93 back there. So they're taking a big physical guy, but who has the athletic ability to move around space, and they're going to have him on that L5. So he makes a great block on the L5, which sets up the running lane for Brandon Wilson to head up the middle. He cuts inside of Brown's block and then gradually kind of fades off to the left side. So excellent return. And it's not just about Wilson. Wilson does a great job. All right. Shows speed, athletic ability, all the things we've been talking about this guy having. But it's not just about him. This is an excellent scheme and great execution. And man, are those things that we'd like to say more about the Bengals on offense and defense. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to. But great job here, coaching, scouting, and then coaching them up to be ready to go with this. Wilson gets the ball, heads straight up the middle. Good block by Andrew Brown. And he cuts inside of that block and then gets up to the double team by Carter and Sample, and then fades off to the left side. All right, that's how you look for guys when they're being pursued. You always kind of want to fade away from it. You don't want to run into a completely straight line. That's going to help with the pursuit. And Brandon Wilson does an excellent job on that return. Definitely a great thing to see. And this is a guy who needs to be getting some more burn for this team. He actually played a good amount on defense this week and looked really good. Jermaine Pratt, a few other bright spots for this team. Jermaine Pratt played more defense than he's played his entire career, all year. He got 31 reps. The most he had gotten previously was 12. So he had 31 snaps in that amount of time. That's about 40%, a little bit less than 40% of the snaps. He had 6 tackles. So good job there. That was third on the team in tackles and in a low number of snaps. He had more tackles than Preston Brown in significantly less snaps. So that is a dude they need to get on the field. If you would like more detail on Pratt to hear a little bit more about the game he had, make sure you check out my article this week, my film room on Cincy Jungle. Got some great clips of some of his top plays there showing why that dude needs to be on the field. He can be part of the answer to the linebacker question. And then the other guy, and it's been talked about all week, but it's Auden Tate. He's a guy that Dalton is starting to trust, and he's getting the ball to quite a bit. He had 5 catches, and every single one of them was absurd. So the Bengals don't have a lot of guys that can really create separation, but they've got some guys that can make some dirty catches. Auden Tate is one of those guys. Obviously, a guy that a lot of people are big fans of, or have been in the past. So definitely, good to see him doing that. And I'm sure a lot of people are very, very happy that their takes on Tate are correct or have been proven correct thus far. So we're not going to focus too much on the Ravens game because, like I said, it's getting awfully repetitive. They're really not fixing a lot of the problems they have. So it's the same things week in and week out that I'm seeing on film. But we are going to talk about a little bit in the context of some things that they can do well, and these being things that they can use against the Denver Broncos. So the Bengals have not been able to run the ball the majority of the season. The only time they were able to run the ball at all was against the Cardinals. And personally, I believe that's because of the strength of the Cardinals front. It was not a strength. I think that the other defensive fronts they faced are much better. I don't think the Jaguars are great up front. They got some good pass rushers. I don't think they're great against the run. But I don't know if they're bad enough for the Bengals to really be able to run the ball against them. So I'm not relying on that. But Joe Mixon needs to get the ball. And that's a big thing about, like, it's a pretty basic tenet, but you got to get your playmakers the ball. All right. When you're setting up an offensive game plan, get the ball into the hands of your playmakers. And not only that, get them the ball in a position where they can do something with it. So here we'll look at a play that they ran against the Ravens. In the second quarter was a 1st and 10 play. And it's about 5 minutes, 36 seconds left in the half. And they were on the 30-yard line. They came out in a 2x2 set. They actually had like a tight end and a wing to the right and 2 receivers stacked to the left. All right. They run a great tailback screen here to Mixon. Now, why was it great? I mean, it was great because of Joe Mixon, honestly. Last week they ran a screen that was really successful because they got the line out and, they had some really good blocking on it. This week, not so much. The line gets out late. They struggled to get off of that D line. Billy Price at left guard gets out there. Looks like he doesn't really want to touch anybody. Looks like he doesn't know what to do, which may have been wise because Alex Redmond comes screaming in from the right guard position and has one of the most clear-cut block in the backs I've ever seen, literally within 5 yards of an official. Don't know how that one was missed, but glad it was. Hopkins kind of gets out there a little bit late as well. So, he doesn't block a soul either. So Mixon, however, is Joe Mixon, and he's out there doing Joe Mixon stuff, and he is able to turn that into a 23-yard gain. A really good positive play for the Bengals. You gotta feed this guy the ball, even if you're not executing in other areas. Get him in space, give him the opportunity to make a play, and he's going to be able to make those plays. So get the ball to Joe Mixon. Screens is a huge part of that. To get the ball to Mixon and to your other playmakers, you can definitely utilize the screen game. So I broke down 4 games, looked at 4 different games on the Jaguars, and really the one that stuck out to me, the one that I think you can take the most from, is their matchup with the Broncos. The Broncos, also not a very good football team, kind of starting to put some stuff together now, and they played them close. They were very close to the end of the game. We'll look at that later on. But the Bengals, we just talked about the tailback screen. They like to do that tailback screen. They like to do it off of a play action. They like to do it off of a jet motion action to really get the action going away. And the Broncos ran a screen off of the jet motion where they actually threw it back to their tight end, who it was a tight end screen to Fant, the rookie, and they got it to him off of that jet motion. He was the jet man. So this plays really well into some of the things that the Bengals have been doing. They came out in a 2x2 formation, motion Fant in, and then he kind of ran across. So you could definitely work that off of the jet action. This isn't quite the jet action with what he really does. It's more of a swipe action, the type of stuff you'll see out of a tight end. But that's something you could do with a Tyler Eifert. We've been trying to figure out, how do they get him the ball? Why don't they give him the ball? We can't be afraid of getting him hurt. We're not saving him for the playoffs at this point. You know what I mean? So it's something they could do with him. Certainly something they could do with any of their receivers. Be nice to see with Alex Erickson as a kickoff return guy. He is used to reading those types of blocks in space. So he's a guy that is able to do those things and could turn into a big play. So Flacco throws it to Fant. And Fant turns it into a 25-yard touchdown. Again, an opportunity for the Bengals to do something like this. We see that they're susceptible to screens. They're definitely going to be susceptible to screens because guess what? You face the Bengals and you're a pass rusher. You are looking forward to facing the Bengals right now, and you're thinking about the numbers you're going to put up. So there are going to be opportunities in the screen game because those guys are really going to be teeing off. So yeah, you can get to Mixon, but you can work off of that jet action, work off of some swipe action, and get it to Tyler Eifert or to some of these receivers as well. All right, so something else that the Bengals did against the Ravens, their first play of the second quarter was 14:48 on the clock. They just got the ball back in the second quarter. They had first and 10 on the 25-yard line. They came out shotgun with Mixon to the right, and they had an H-back and a receiver real tight to the right. And that was Uzama was the H-back, and Alex Erickson was the receiver, and they had two receivers stacked to the left. So they sent Tyler Boyd in motion, and really what they're doing here, they're creating a bunch. So creating a bunch and being able to run bunch concept plays without really declaring a bunch by having actually three receivers sitting there at the edge. That's a method that that offensive coordinators will use so they can run their bunch concept plays and routes without having the defense have the opportunity to really adjust to it. And you can do that with the back, with the back's alignment as well, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But this motion does that. All right, so Boyd is coming in motion as the ball is snapped, and he just kind of runs out towards the sideline. So what they do here is a basic, we call it a star concept, where they're basically all hitching up. I think Boyd's really to the flat more so, but you get a couple of hitches and guys coming across each other. So, Boyd runs to the flat. You have Erickson coming into the middle and hitching up kind of over the quarterback. And then you've got Uzama releasing wide and hitching up. So, it creates this situation where you've got a few different hitches. The motion messed with the defense here. The Ravens' defensive communication was an issue for them. And we'll take a look at a play a little bit later where you're going to see motion causing a problem for the Jaguars defensively as well. But it allows them to run this stuff, and Uzama makes the catch and gains 22 yards. So that's really using scheme, using formation and motion to get a player open, and a really good smart play by the Bengals, who you haven't seen use formation and motion to get players open really nearly enough. All right, so looking back at that matchup against the Broncos. So the Broncos, late in the first quarter, they had a third down situation. It was actually 3rd and 7. And they came out with a tight end and a receiver to the right and two receivers to the left. Flacco was in the shotgun, and he had his running back, Royce Freeman, to his left by those twin receivers. So they actually did something similar to get into a bunch-ish look without actually being in bunch. And to take advantage of some of those concepts and run something kind of similar schematically to the star route. So they took their widest receiver, motioned him in to just inside of the guy who was originally the slot, and that guy worked his way across the field. The wider receiver, when the ball was snapped, he ran to the corner. All right, so you got that outside receiver eventually run to the corner. You got the motion man run into the slant. And really, this is just the same as that star concept. What are we doing? We are clearing out space inside and out so we can put a guy in the middle, clear out a little bit of space there for him. Remember, I said before, you can use an offset back fullback, running back, doesn't matter. An offset back can, essentially make a formation a bunch. He can be that third guy in the bunch because his alignment allows him to release quickly. And really in this case, the fact that he's a little bit delayed because he's in the backfield is actually better. It helps it set up. It helps clear out some space. So Freeman is offset to that twin side. All right, you get the motion man running the slant. You get the other receiver running the deep out or corner route, and that opens it up for Royce Freeman. He circles around and he breaks. He actually breaks to the inside where he catches it about where it would be for a hitch. And this Jaguars defense, you don't want to throw to the outside on them, but they are susceptible and stuff over the middle. So this is really smart use of scheme, and it's a great way to get to the ball to somebody in the middle. This would be another example of how get the ball to Joe Mixon, get it to him in space, allow him to make plays. You can do the same thing with Gio Bernard. All right, they can both run this play and be great, so they can get the ball in their hands and make some plays. 3rd and 7, they're throwing a short pass and gaining 15 yards and getting this first down. So because he's able to rack it so much, run after the catch and gain so many additional yards on this. So this is an awesome play here by the Broncos. So we are, really Joe Flacco and the Broncos, they did this a lot. They worked the middle of the field quite a bit. We're going to talk about that more in the third act here of the show as we, finish up with our guests talking some Jaguars and come back around. We're going to take a look at the Broncos' final drive and how they were able to use the middle of the field to effectively move the ball downfield. Really, the Bengals need to be able to move the ball downfield effectively in the pass game, be real efficient with it, and the Broncos really gave them a blueprint in this Week 4 matchup. So we're going to have to check that one out. All right, so to wrap up this week's show, we are going to do a 2-minute drill, all right? And this is the end of the game, all right, or near the end of the game, Broncos and Jaguars in Week 4. Coming into this, the Broncos are down 17-23, looking to mount a comeback, and they get the ball back with 2 minutes and 54 seconds on the clock. After the Jags kick a field goal. So we're going to see some of the things we've already talked about and kind of alluded to, and how Flacco really moves the ball efficiently down the field on this play. On this drive, really work in the middle of the field. And that's something the Bengals can do too. The Bengals need to have some success on offense and be able to effectively move the ball and score in the red zone, most importantly. But this is something that they can do, and they can effectively do with Auden Tate, with Tyler Boyd, with Alex Erickson and some of those guys as well. So the first play, it is 1st and 10, obviously, with 2 minutes and 54 seconds left in the game. The Broncos, following a touchback, have the ball on their own 25. They came out in an empty set. All right, so they have trips to the right and twins, all right, 2 receivers to the left. So the Jaguars are in a one deep look. And I've talked a little bit before about how you can be in a bind, defensively against an empty formation. So it limits what you can do. The thing is, the Bengals haven't had great pass protection. So, in addition to causing holes in the coverage, what empty can do is it limits a little bit what they can do in terms of a blitz. Sure, they can send a blitz, but if they do, it's going to be pretty obvious. Dalton's going to be able to see it because they got to get wider. They got to put more players outside of the box to account for the 5 split out receivers. So that is a way to kind of help with the pass protection. That if there is a blitz coming, at least even though there's only 5 guys to block, at least it's coming. You can dish it off, and we'll kind of talk about that in just a second as well. But this play, all right, they're going to run a deep crosser over the middle. And what happens really, it's coming from the trip side. So it's the number 2 receiver on the 3 receiver side. All right. And, just like I talked about earlier with the kickoff, we number from outside in. The number 3 receiver, that tightest receiver who's kind of bunched with the number 2 receiver, really close by. He kind of hitches up, and the number 2 receiver bends right off of his butt, basically. So what that does is that linebacker sits. All right, the nearest linebacker, he sits on that route. He doesn't drop off at all. The slot corner, possibly safety, whatever defensive back they have out there over the number 2 guy, he widens out. It's like a cover 3 look here. So with the outside backer to that side sitting, the linebacker to that side sitting, and the outside backer or invert player, nickel corner, whatever you call it, he's the outside linebacker scheme-wise or safety scheme-wise. With that guy working out and the linebacker sitting, that opens up space behind the linebacker. So they're able to take Emmanuel Sanders and get him open, and now the backside inside backer and the free safety have to respond, and they're unable to get there on time. So that ends up being a gain of 16 yards. Again, this is a team that has vulnerability in the middle of the field. So that gets them a first down. And the next play is going to be 1st and 10 from their 41-yard line with 2 minutes and 20 seconds to play. They come out in a trips formation with 3 receivers to Flacco's right, a single receiver to his left, and they've got the back in the backfield is offset to the single receiver side. So the single receiver is Courtland Sutton. Now, the Jags, again, are in a one-high look, and their safety is cheated. He's playing directly over the number 3 receiver to the trip side. So he's not truly playing in the middle of the field. He's playing in between the receivers, which makes sense. It's smart. There's more of a threat over there. And what the Broncos do, that's really smart too. They send Courtland Sutton on a skinny post. All right? So a post is running vertically and then kind of cutting in at a 45-degree angle towards the middle of the field. All right, and keeping going vertically. A skinny post means it's going to be quite a 45-degree angle. You're going to head a little bit more upfield. And that's really smart here because now he's not running himself covered. So into that safety who's lined up way on the other side of the field. So, Sutton runs that. He opens up because the Broncos took their number 3 receiver and hitched him up over the middle of the field. That is occupying the linebacker for the Jaguars. And creates a great opening on that backside post for Courtland Sutton on the skinny post on the backside. So great play. They gain 27 yards on the play, get it across middle field. Sutton wants to get them up to the line of scrimmage. They're not going to have enough time, though. They end up letting it roll to the 2-minute warning. So that gets us, as I said, to the 2-minute warning. And it's 1st and 10. The Broncos have crossed midfield, and they come out really in a bunch look. 3 receivers bunched to the right. They've got a single receiver who is also tight to the left, and the back is offset to the bunch side. Now, I talked before about how the defense is in a tough position, and it's hard for them to blitz when the offense comes out and empty. All right, hard to pick up, but hard to disguise as well. Bunch is the opposite, right? They can bring players from anywhere because the Jaguars really, except for their safety, everybody's really close to the line of scrimmage and really close to the quarterback in a bunch look. So it makes it tough because there's basically 10 guys that could be coming in a bunch formation. So that makes life a little bit difficult. The Broncos actually motion a guy across that helps Flacco to see what's going on because they motion across. Now it's a 2-by-2 look. And the Jags are bringing the pressure. You see they bring a player across to cover the motion man. There's some communication issues. The safety's rocking which way. They're a little messed up. Like we talked about earlier, the Ravens got a little messed up with their communication in coverage due to motion from the Bengals. There's a similar issue here with the Jags getting a little bit confused by the Broncos as they come in motion. They do send a 5-man pressure. There's a stunt. They're moving guys around. This is something that will be difficult for the Bengals to pick up. Flacco recognizes it, and he gets rid of the ball real fast out to the flat. Now, here's what stinks, though. The deep dig is wide open. I mean, there's nobody out there but the deep safety because of those miscommunications. Flacco's getting rid of the ball. He's being smart. He's getting rid of the ball because he knows that pressure's coming, but he's not taking advantage of the miscommunication and the fact that they've got a receiver, really wide open there. That number one receiver coming on that dig route. So it ends up being a gain of 2 yards and they run out of bounds. So not a loss for the Broncos, but not really taking advantage. So those blitz situations, Dalton hadn't been very good at sitting in there and taking the hit and throwing an accurate ball, but man, does he need to, because there's going to be opportunities like this for some big time passes, and the Bengals need it. I mean, they need to be efficient, they need to be good, and they need Dalton to be effective. They need great quarterback play in order to win because they need to score. They need to help that defense out. So that brings up 2nd and 8 with 1:53. They end up running the ball for a gain of 9 yards. So, they've been up tempo. They've been throwing the ball down the field, working the middle of the field. And just like we've seen with the Bengals, when they've gone into a 2-minute mode, the Broncos are able to run the ball effectively. They bring a lineman around, pulling, and he kicks out. Actually, they get up to the linebackers with a tight end and a real quick combo block. Unfortunately, there was a hold, and that hold is actually on that tight end who got up to the linebacker. So it ends up being a negative play for them. They get bumped back, and now it's 2nd and 13 on the 35 of the Jaguars. The Jags now come out, and it looks like a 1-high to start with, but they really end up getting into a 2-high look on the snap. So something a little bit different from what they've been showing so far. And in that sort of look, what's open? The middle of the field's open, and that's where the Broncos are going to strike them. We've seen them hit in the middle of the field. With those digs to 1-high look, and they can certainly do it to a 2-high look, and in a way it's going to be more open with a 2-high look as well. So the Broncos are in shotgun. They've got a H-back and a receiver to the right-hand side, and they've got twins, 2 receivers to the left. Flacco is in the shotgun with a running back offset to his left. So the H-back runs an out route, and really Emmanuel Sanders, the receiver at the top of the screen and on the right-hand side for Flacco, he releases inside, and he gets a little bit of an opening on his man there. All right, because what they're doing here is really a 2-man look. So there's a bit of a brush, a bit of a pick there because of the out-cutting route by the tight end, and it helps Sanders get open over the middle of the field. All right, cover 2, the help for that defensive back for that coverage man is deep and outside, not to the middle. Sanders catches the ball, and he's able to rack up those yards on the run after the catch and gain 27 yards, setting them up with 1st and goal on the 8-yard line, 1:38 to play. And what do? They go back to something that they've already had some success with. They come out in a trips look, trips to the right, single receiver to the left. They put that guy tight, and they go back to that backside skinny post. Courtland Sutton is the backside receiver. All right. Once again, they put the tight end across the middle, trying to draw attention to those linebackers, creating a one-on-one situation for Sutton on the outside. All right, it's a single deep look for the Jags, and that single deep man is way over by the trip side. Again, makes sense, but this is where that can come back to hurt them. This is good game plan. This is a good call, offensively for the Broncos. So the Broncos did a really good job. And if you see, I don't know if this game pops up on NFL Network in the next few days, leading up to the Bengals Jaguars matchup, definitely want to check out, especially if it's the end of the game here. They're doing some really cool things. and pretty basic, but they're working the middle of the field. The Jags have some really good corners. Even with Ramsey out, they do a good job out west. That is, they do a good job on the outside. Working the middle of the field can pay some major dividends for the Bengals. The Bengals need to be effective offensively. This defense has been fighting. I mean, they're not good. Don't get me wrong. They got a lot of problems on defense, both schematically and personnel-wise. But this group has been fighting, and they've played pretty well at times. But they can't finish games, and a big part of that is all the 3-and-outs. It's having to go out on the field all the time. So the Bengals need to be able to effectively move the ball and score and give their defense a rest, because I think this defense can fight through a game. But they need the offense to score points too. They need the offense to score points. They need the offense to hold the ball and give them a break every once in a while. So I think the Broncos gave the offense a good game plan for that. That's why I focused on that. We could talk about Gardner Minshew. We could talk about Leonard Fournette, and I kind of touch on those guys and this Jaguars offense earlier in the week. Well, actually, it's coming out. Depending on when you're listening to this, probably coming out about Friday or so. On Cincy Jungle, you can check out my preview. It'll cover all the aspects of the Jaguars, but really focusing here on their defense and how we can attack that defense and how they really should be doing it. Because the Bengals can do this. They can be efficient with it. It's going to take great quarterback play and some good play calling. Unfortunately, two things that have been a little bit tough to come by as of late. So hopefully this is the week to turn it around. Going into approaching the bye week, going into London week, big travel week, big kind of homecoming, going back to McVay for Zach Taylor. After this, let's not make it 0-7. Let's see if the Bengals can pull one out here and get the victory. Hopefully, we've got some good news coming back next week, and this staff and this team has started to put something together. So again, I referenced a few of my write-ups from this week on Cincy Jungle. Make sure you're checking out all the quality content on there. There's always some great stuff from all the writers on Cincy Jungle. If you are listening to the download, and you want to get a clearer picture of things, check us out on YouTube. All the video content from this podcast is also available on YouTube, so you can see what I'm talking about as I'm talking about it. And if you are somebody who watches this on YouTube, you can check out the download too. And that's where I have my guests. We're going to talk a little bit about the Jags this week with a special guest from SB Nation's Jaguar page. And get a little bit more in depth with some of those guys. So if you're feeling, a little outed because we didn't get into the Mustache Man or Fournette, make sure you check that out. But again, back here every Thursday night. This sucker's going live all season long, and hopefully they keep me around in the off season too. So hopefully we're here next week, and we're feeling good about life going into that Ravens game at Wembley. See you then.